Okay, today's project is a Sovtek. It looks like it's in pretty bad shape. Looks like one tube is bad. Fuse holder looks a little narfed. Front panel looks okay. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is test all the tubes. This one does not look very well. Alright, these screen resistors all look discolored. Now they all test good, but I'm going to replace them all. 5881s like to use 470s, so I'm going to put in 471 percenters. I get real good results with that. These caps, this brand of caps has a habit of leaking over time, so I'm going to test these with the ERS meter and see how they check. Alright, I'm going to test the supply caps. What you want to make sure you drain them all before. Short them out and drain them. Make sure they have 0 volts across them. Then you hook them up to the ESR meter. Put it on ESR, set the frequency for 10K. And you get a reading of 1.2 ohms. That's pretty good. That tells me that that capacitor is good. You want to do that for all the rest of them. So let me check those. Okay, I tested all the caps. They all test good. Now I want to test the transformer, see if it's been damaged. These are the output jacks on the transformer, and I noticed that this one really sticks right there, so that's going to need replaced. Okay, I'm going to test the secondaries of the output transformer. Put it in the 4 ohm hole, and I get a reading of 13 millihenries. In the 8 ohm hole, it should be around double, and I get 32 millihenries. That's right. And in the 16 ohm hole, I'm getting about 80 millihenries. So I would say the secondary of the output transformer tests good. Next, I want to check the primary of the output transformer. So I set my meter for L, 1K. Actually, I like it on 100 hertz setting better, actually, for output transformers. And so I do the center tap, and then I use a T-pin to do pin 3 of the output jack. And I get a reading of 7.8 henries. So I test it to pin 3 on the other side. And I should get the same reading, or close to it, 7.8 henry. So that's pretty good. I would say the output transformer on this amp is in good shape. Okay, the next step is to test the preamp tubes. And this is an emission style tester. This is the first test I do on the tubes. So my settings are, I look them up on a list, but it's A8, F7. It's for half of the preamp tube. And then you hit the little tester switch, and it tells you, it tests the tube as a diode, and it will tell you whether it's at a minimum acceptable level. Alright, so it looks like one half of those tubes are good, so then you test the other halves between pins 2 and 3. Okay, now we test the output tubes. The output tubes have a different setting, A8E5, A8E5, and we put them in this socket. Gotta let the heater warm up. Alright, looks like that tube squeaks by. And here's the blackened tube, which I would not use, but I'm going to test it anyway. If there's a dead short in it, that should light up too. Okay, that tube is completely dead. I get nothing on that. I'm surprised it isn't shorted. Next, I'm going to clean all the controls. Clean the input jacks. Run these back and forth. Return them all to 0 again, and spray them one more time. Back to 0. Alright, we're going to spray these jacks out too. I can see on this tube socket there's a little bit of burn damage there. Yeah, that tube socket's going to need replaced. Alright, I'm going to have to contact the customer, see if he uses this amp as a 50-watt amp. So he may or may not want that replaced. Okay, I got most of that carbon burn off. Yeah, see, it's nice and clean there between the sockets. I think that should be usable. There we go. See that? Alright, just don't want anything shorting between the pins. When I replace these screen resistors, I like to use 475 watt, 1% highest grade. So, and it doesn't make much sense to use matched tubes if you don't use matched resistors. So I test all my resistors before I install them. 468. This one's 468 also. And so are the other two. I've already tested them. So I match all 4 of these. Put them in here so that when you get 4 matched tubes, everybody's matched up perfectly. How about that? Now looking at these screen resistors, you can tell that all the colors are kind of cooked to, I don't know what bands those are, but they look like they've had a lot more current than what they intended. So replaced all of them. Alright, there you have it. All the screen resistors replaced with high quality 1% resistors. Very nice. Make sure your soldering is always clean. Okay, so since this is a Sovtek amp, I like to use Sovtek tubes because that's what it was designed for. 5881s and 6L6s are the same specs, but I like to use the Sovteks in Sovteks. Now, since my client likes to use half as many tubes to use this amp as a 50-watt amp, I get asked about this many times. When you use 2 tubes, I like the outside pair, and when you use half the tubes, you got to plug into a different jack. So my 16 ohm cabinet plugs into the 8 ohm jack when you have half as many tubes, because the output transformer is a ratio between the tubes and the speaker cabinet. So if you change the tubes at one end, you got to change the speaker load at the other. This amp also had a blown 4 amp fuse, so I had to replace it. That's the old one. It's already replaced. So plug it up, turn it on. That's about all I can play one-handed. But yeah, it works. Now I'll set the bias and it's done. Okay, so I removed this because this was a shock hazard. 2 amps going, touch that, it'd kill you. So what I did was I put a fender style in with a trim ring on it, washer. And you got to put it on the back too, because these Russian fuse holders leave such a big hole. So replace that like that, and I'll do the same. I'll replace this one too so they match. Okay, here's a trick my first boss Phil taught me about 30 years ago. Is you take your nail polish and let me see if we're getting that in there, and you put it on your thread, and it keeps the nut from backing out. Seals it right in there. Alright, that's a pain in the ass. Here we go, right there. Boom. Now you don't have to worry about that nut backing itself out. It'll be sealed in there. And there we go. There's the finished product. Nice and clean. One's a 2 amp, one's a 4 amp. And they don't have to be, schematic says they're fast blow, so you don't have to spend the extra money to put in slow blows. And the last step is put it back in the cabinet and play it a while, which I've already done, and it sounds good. So remember, have as many tubes. 16 ohm cabinet plugs in the 8 ohm hole, and an 8 ohm cabinet plugs in the 4 ohm hole. If you have a 4 ohm cabinet, I do not recommend running it with half as many tubes. And that is all for this repair.